Furries are weird people with weird interests and weird habits. There, it's out of the way. Dust: An Elysian Tale is yet another $15 indie game that's supposedly amazing, or so we've been told over and over by gaming media oligarchy. In NDAs and shaming rhetoric we trust. At any rate, anyone that's not entranced by the flashy exterior of gaming websites know that they have the same credibility and integrity as Bernard Madoff. So, does Dust really live up to these standards? Well, the devil's in the details, so let's go find out. But the answer's no. Dust: An Elysian Tale is Castlevania's Symphony of the Night turned into a Saturday morning cartoon. I mean that in a good way, actually. It's bathed in a lot of charm that you might expect to find in a good cartoon you liked growing up. This is achieved by the wonderfully drawn graphical styling. Although the dialogue images kind of looked like they were taken straight off of the DeviantArt front page, they could use some more detail. The visuals flow and animate very well, and establishes an atmosphere very readily. Enemies look cool, and the combat looks awesome when it's hectic, but some of these designs look really phoned in. I really like the environmental effects in this game as well, especially the snow. In all, when you read about Dust having good visuals, it really does. It has a nice style about it, and I can see this game aging well because of it. On top of it all, the music does a very good job of setting a tone for the environment you're in, and for what's going on. I would have liked to have seen more detail put into the conversation and the cutscenes, but all in all, it's a pretty good looking game. Without a doubt though, the story is the weakest part of the game. I wanted to vomit blood every time I saw a reviewer claim this game had a good story. Guys, just because a game tries to invest you emotionally, doesn't mean it has a good story. You play as a thing called Dust. He wakes up in the forest the morning after Woodstock with a wicked hangover, and he can't remember who he is. He's so fucked up, he's still tripping on the LSD that you score from Jimi Hendrix because you meet a talking sword named the Blade of Uhuru, as well as a talking flying hamster named Gadget. Wait. I think that was wait. Whatever. So you set off with the Blade of Uhuru and Gadget as you adventure through the woods and find monsters. The monsters must have voted for Nixon because they attack you. You do your typical tutorial level. Oh, I have amnesia. Oh, I found out I'm a good fighter. Ooh, I gotta save Bugs Bunny and so far. Blah, 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 blah. This is my problem with the story here. Vague doesn't translate to meaningful, and by definition having a protagonist with amnesia makes the story vague if it's being observed from their perspective. He doesn't have much of a case of amnesia if he can remember who he has genuine emotional ties to. He can't remember anything. So when you walk into a town and meet this woman, it's heavily implied that she'll be significant to the plot somehow. We're expected to garner some kind of emotional attachment to her, but how is that possible when we don't even know her? As far as Dust is concerned, she's just some mopey cunt that walks up and down the street in front of her house. Even with Gadget. Oh no, wait, that's Fidget. Okay, so anyways, with Fidget, the story comes up short. In fact, it's more disappointing here. Dust doesn't know anything about himself, and Fidget is like the first person or flying hamster person that he meets. She goes along with him, having adventures with him, and by the very nature of this, you feel a bigger attachment to Fidget than you do to Ginger, who is probably too busy updating her Facebook profile with song lyrics she thinks are meaningful. Hey, Ginger, stop listening to nu metal, it's shit. But even with the greater attachment, it really comes up short. You spend the game getting lighthearted and joking remarks from her, and then all of a sudden she's seriously emotionally involved with Dust, as if Dust were more than just a friend, but like a loyal companion she's been through a lot with. Which she is, really. That's the sad part, though. This is a case in which a subplot side quest where you helped Fidget overcome something, reunited her with a loved one or a cherished possession, or something similar would have really helped. It would have established a lot of depth to the relationship. That's why you ended up liking the party members in Knights of the Old Republic. Again, protagonist with amnesia, with no recollection of his past, starting out in a bad place. But here's the difference. You actually meet people, you talk to them, you get to know them, you go through some rough patches with them, and help them out on subplots involving their own personal conflicts. You see, you actually established some emotional investment with these characters, and I know people might say it's folly to compare a 2D action game like Dust to an RPG like Knights of the Old Republic, and I'd agree if it weren't for the fact that the game is full of side quests. They could have easily done this. In the end, they didn't, and I found myself just not giving a shit about anything that happened in the story, eventually just skipping past the dialogue. Normally I wouldn't care too much about the story, But I have a feeling that Humble Hearts really wanted to turn this game into something more. It feels as if there was some genuine heart and soul behind this game, unlike other indie games. I'd even go so far as describing Dust as having some artistic merit to it. I do hope Humble Hearts gets a chance to improve upon this in a sequel. So, Dust has nice visuals and a disappointing story. What about what actually matters? Yeah, it's decent. With spot-on controls, it's fun to play as Dust as you unleash combos and specials to build up your experience bonuses. In addition to leveling up Dust, you can attach armor sets, weapon upgrades, and other items to make Dust stronger. It's a pretty simple and easy to pick up system. You have your basic attacks you can combo together, and you also have the Dust Storm, which can be used on the ground or in the air, and alongside Fidget's special ability. Using it in conjunction with her special ability produces a screen-filling special attack that damages multiple enemies. This will end up being your main panic strategy for dealing with hordes of enemies. Use Aerial Dust Storm, and have Fidget utilize her voodoo to result in screen-filling chaos. As you go along, you unlock new abilities like sliding. Yeah, sliding. Kind of makes you think for a moment. Throughout the game, you see little tunnels that you're meant to slide through, a la Mega Man 3. Okay, that's cool. But you have to learn how to slide? And sliding is the only way through this? Why can't Dust just go, I really need to get through here. What should I do, Fidget? And then Fidget goes,
Get on your hands and knees and fucking crawl, you moron!
And climbing too? Are you saying that this guy has never climbed something before? And don't give me that bullshit that he's got amnesia and he doesn't remember how to. He clearly knows how to use a fucking sword and talk, as well as recalling the do's and don'ts of society. But, without a doubt, the biggest flaw in the gameplay is the parry system. People complain that it just doesn't work and is pointless. Well, it does work, but it's still completely fucking pointless. You hold the attack button as you slash with the blade of Uhuru. That's the important part, you hold the button. Don't just try and match the enemy blow for blow, that's stupid. Attack, hold the button, and you will parry. When you parry, your enemy has the chance of being stunned, leaving them open to an attack. Now that sounds all fine and good, but in a game where you can fly around hurling fire and lightning at random like Phil Fish throws tantrums, using parry to stagger enemies is pretty pointless. And it would be completely useless in this game if there weren't specific enemies that require you to parry them. And they are very, very few and far between. When you're forcing the player to use a largely useless playability, that's not a good thing. It feels tacked on, as if they decided, oh hey, we have this thing, we better use it, let's try to cram it in there. A lot of ideas and things are left on the cutting room floor in game development, and it's a sad fact of the creative process, but a necessary one. In the end, it was just a bad idea to include to begin with. The game itself is pretty vast. You control Dust as you explore towns and wilderness, talking to villagers, getting side quests, and leveling up for the inevitable final boss. I played through it pretty lazily, doing side quests as I go along. I clocked in about 15 hours worth of gameplay. That's pretty respectable for a downloadable indie title. Even AAA releases can barely manage to eke out 7 hours, so I have to give Dust credit where it's due, and there's a lot of content here. Aside from that, the only real complaint I have is the atmosphere-breaking insertions of this shit. I have a feeling this might have been shoehorned in against the creator's will. I wouldn't be surprised. Oh, amazing. It's a fucking Flash game character. Yeah, I really needed this pitched to me. Thanks, guys. In the end, Dust is a flawed but still very enjoyable game. Dean Dodrill set some very high goals for himself, and what he crafted largely succeeds. I know I spent a lot of time bitching about the story, but I feel that it's necessary criticism. He wants to make a sequel apparently, and I personally would like to see that. I'd be interested in the sequel to Dust because it's still a fun game in face of all of its shortcomings. So for $15, is it worth the purchase? Yes it is. The hype that it got from idiotic mainstream reviewers is so ridiculous. It sets an unfair standard for the game to reach. This could get the consumer into buying a game and then becoming disappointed with it. This could potentially hurt what I see as another good indie developer. Art is only as good as those who critique it. If it becomes an intellectual Ouroboros, it really doesn't get far as an art form. Artistic doesn't just mean it has a style to it either. It means it comes with some kind of expression behind it. It's an idea that an artist put together and asks to be experienced. Furthermore, art doesn't necessarily denote quality. This kind of hyperbole really upsets me because I think Dean Dodrill has the talent to create something pretty enjoyable, and I'd hate to see his will dashed by unfair standards set by the slack-jawed media dunces that haven't an ounce of credibility to their name. Dust is good, but it isn't a Mona Lisa or a 1984. It doesn't need to be. It's just a fun game to play. And Humble Hearts shouldn't be expected to churn out masterpiece after masterpiece. A masterpiece is just that, the crowning achievement of a master. And I'm sure even Dean agrees that he's got some things to learn still. It's good to hold an artist to a high standard, but don't make it so high as to kill off his will to produce. In conclusion, I can recommend Dust: An Elysian Tale. It possesses minor storytelling flaws and some tacked-on mechanics, but they never get in the way of a good game, and it ends up being a satisfying experience.